but I'll always be like a home girl and very much like a European girl, I'd say, yeah, for sure.
The journey of women's MMA was once so limited, underestimated, and neglected that the idea of it ever becoming a mainstream attraction seemed unrealistic. Promotions and event organizers considered women's divisions financially risky, athletically uncertain, and lacking audience appeal. To break such a barrier, the sport didn't just need a skilled fighter. It needed a symbol, a headline, a face, and a revolution. That gap was eventually filled by Ronda Rousey, a fearless, unfiltered, Olympic-level judoka who didn't merely knock on the UFC's door, she forced it open. Her undefeated streak, signature arm bars, media magnetism, and aggressive confidence turned women's MMA from an undercard experiment into a main event attraction. It was this very foundation that allowed a newer generation of athletes to grow, refine, and transform the sport into something more advanced. Out of that new era, one name has begun to shine with historic potential: Dakota Ditcheva. Dakota Ditcheva was not just another talented fighter. She was the result of a complete athletic blueprint built from childhood. Growing up training in the gyms of Leigh, Manchester, she did not simply study martial arts. She developed a competitive identity. With her mother being a former world champion Muay Thai fighter, Dakota didn't just learn techniques. She inherited discipline, grit, and the mindset that an athlete's success is not based on talent alone, but on evolution. While she is primarily known as a Muay Thai striker, her natural progression shaped her into a fighter with multiple layers: striking IQ, defensive grappling, cage movement, counter timing, distance manipulation, and finishing awareness. Unlike older-era fighters, her foundation was never built on a single discipline. She grew as a modern hybrid generation MMA weapon. The comparison with Ronda Rousey doesn't happen casually. It happens because Ronda represents the benchmark of her era. During her climb to dominance, women's MMA largely followed a singular judo-based domination model, where most fights followed the pattern of clinch, throw, armbar. This predictability succeeded only because most female fighters of that era weren't technically or defensively prepared against Olympic-level grappling. Dakota comes from a completely different era, where data-driven coaching, cross-discipline training, sports physiology, mental conditioning, and timing-based striking systems are standard. Fighters are no longer just artists. They are engineered combat systems. Dakota's world involves analysts, sports scientists, video strategists, and AI-based pattern studies, whereas Ronda's era ran on raw instinct, physicality, and explosive aggression. That evolution gap is where today's debate lives. Dakota's undefeated streak is not simply about the number of wins. The real value lies in the method, precision, and composure displayed inside each victory. Her win against Taila Santos, a former UFC title challenger, was not just a milestone, it was a defining message. Dakota didn't rush, panic, or brawl. She spent the first round establishing range, creating defensive fog, studying rhythm, and forcing Taila into predictable angles. Once Dakota downloaded enough timing information, she shifted into purposeful aggression in the second round and secured a finish, earning the PFL Flyweight World Championship. This approach reflects what modern MMA calls the download process strike intelligence model, something nearly unseen during Ronda's reign, where fights relied more on forceful entry and emotional momentum. On the industry and financial side, the comparison becomes equally fascinating. Dakota's million-dollar championship victory brought her international recognition, but unlike many sudden stars, her identity remains performance-based, not media-constructed. Ronda, on the other hand, became a global celebrity crossing into Hollywood, WWE, and mainstream endorsement networks, positioning herself not only as an athlete, but as a cultural icon. Dakota currently represents the opposite archetype. The pure, cold, technical athlete, whose value comes from the cage, not from promotional theatrics. If she continues down this authentic path, her legacy may become a uniquely respected blueprint for future fighters who value mastery over media. When discussing prime versus prime, the debate shifts from fantasy to era collision. In a hypothetical matchup, Ronda would likely push forward with clinch entries, cage pressure, and hip control takedown attempts. Dakota, however, possesses modern stance switching, range disruption through teeps and long jabs, late-level sprawl systems, and counter-elbow threats that could punish predictable entries. Dakota's ability to throw multiple strike variations per second from shifting footwork angles would make Ronda's forward pressure far more dangerous than it once was. But it must also be acknowledged, if Ronda succeeded in achieving clean body contact and initiating a throwing sequence, Dakota would face a high-intensity grappling situation requiring emergency frames, scrambles, and technical escapes. The theoretical result would depend on range. Striking favors Dakota, clinch favors Ronda. Analyst Dan Hardy's statement supporting Dakota isn't rooted in fan bias. It is based on trajectory logic. Combat sports evolve through eras, not rivalries. In boxing, we see contrasting giants like Ali, Tyson, and Mayweather, all legendary but incomparable because each fought within different tactical universes. In jiu-jitsu, comparing Royce Gracie to Gordon Ryan is not about talent, but about knowledge density, training evolution, and technical engineering. Dakota versus Ronda is a similar phenomenon. One is the origin flame, and the other is the modernized embodiment of its growth. The debate signifies evolution, not disrespect. There is also a psychological layer rarely discussed. Ronda was mentally fierce, intimidating, and emotionally explosive, a psychological hurricane who could break opponents before the fight even started. Yet, when she faced Holm and Nunes, her difficulty with tactical adaptation became visible. Dakota, in contrast, operates with analytical calmness. Her composure is not based on hype or rage, but on controlled emotional neutrality. Modern fighters are trained not to fight from adrenaline, but from data, rhythm, and timing psychology. Dakota's confidence in interviews does not resemble trash talk. It resembles self-calibrated awareness. There is a deeper philosophical angle, too. Can future athletes surpass the legends who paved the path? History consistently answers yes. Progress does not erase legacy. It extends it. Ronda constructed the bridge, but Dakota and fighters like her are reinforcing and expanding that very structure. Legends must be honored, but evolution must be acknowledged. The purpose of pioneers is to break open doors, while the purpose of successors is to walk through them and build new architecture. Dakota is not trying to dethrone history. She is trying to upgrade the blueprint. Ultimately, the debate can be condensed into one sentence. Ronda Rousey was the spark. Dakota Ditcheva is the product of the fire. Both women are champions of their eras. Both changed the sport in different ways. The conclusion isn't about who is better in isolation, but about how far the sport has traveled. If Ronda represents the beginning of a historic chapter, Dakota represents one of its most advanced pages. Combat sports follow a single eternal rule. The game never stops. The game always evolves.